Okay, this is rearranging the padding now to how you like, adding another layer. And some of it looks jagged and you wonder how the form's going to go smoothly, but really it's not much to worry about at this stage. Just keep filling out the form, getting the pins in how you can. It's a rough approximation really. It might be better to put some kind of vest over it. I don't do that in this segment, just for quickness really, and always sort of measure as you go and concentrate on the back. And again, you can fill it out however you wish and just keep going until it's roughly your form, your measure. Now it's time to drape. And you can use the hard edge for the front, that won't get too much in the way. The selvage edge. I'm using an old sheet for this, and usually you would wash it, iron it, but again, if you don't have time, then it doesn't really matter. I'm assessing how it hangs just there. Now I'm going to show this as an option. It's not something I do, not usually. I know how to do it, but I just sort of freehand it. But you can use the tape to line up everything so that you don't lose your way. And then you just can help it as you go along. This is a close-up of how you put the pins in, and try and keep where the pin goes in at the actual edge, because it stops movement right on the edge. Not too wide, just right. You do that all the way down, following your guide. You put more pins in as you go down, but obviously for quickness, I'm not doing that. But I would normally put more pins in, because as you can see, it takes a fair bit of time to get them in, and I'm putting them in rather wide. They wouldn't normally be that wide. The distance between where it goes in and where it comes out, the pin. Okay, coming down to the waist at this point, and you don't really need to keep going, but if you want it all not to shift too much, you can just put a pin in at the end near the hip. Making sure that you keep the panel fairly square so it's not hanging down too much, because you're trying to keep that grain nice and even. We'll come to the tricky part where you've got the excess fullness, where you would normally have a bust start. And you just tape over that. We'll worry about that later on. Try to keep it as tidy as you can. We use another panel now as we go into the side of the bust. You can pick however many panels that you'd like for a corset, however many it feels right to design as you go. And again, as you get round that curve there, you would use more pins. You'd be more precise. But as we go along, you'll see that you just keep refining it, refining the fit, refining the pins. The trick is to get it all on as you go. Not get bogged down too much by the detail. Any excess in the way, just cut it off. But as you're cutting it off, cut it upwards as you come away, so you don't cut out too much. And I'm just finding the side seam there. And on a corset, you don't normally work to the side seam on the form, but you can if you want to. It's just that you have a panel that normally goes over that. I'm just putting the pins in to keep it fairly flat and even, so it doesn't all fall down. Now cutting away some more excess. Now I notice the bagging at the front, where it comes under the bust. And that's usually something you just tuck away as you go. At the moment I'm not working too close to the form. That's something that will come later on. This is just a first fly past, if you like. Now I'm going to work on the other side. Just normally you wouldn't do this, you just work on the front half and the back half, but I'm doing this to show you freehand without the tape guide. Just showing the distance between the princess seam and the centre front. more or less, lining it up where it feels right, because you're working on half the body. Those measures get duplicated for the other side, which keeps it all nice and equal. And I know I'm emphasising it again, but you would put more pins in as you come over the bust, especially any curve. You would put more pins in to stop shifting. Cutting the excess away again at the shoulder. We're not sure what the design's going to be like at the front and under the arms and at the bottom as yet, so we leave enough to give us a bit of freedom for that later on. And as we come to the side of the bust, there's still some more excess, fullness if you like, that you're sort of draping around and pinning around. When things fall down, just pin them out of place so that you can see what you're doing. Tucking the fullness out the way. It looks fairly bumpy at this stage. But again, if you have some kind of thick vest over the padding, it would be smoother. More cutting away around the armhole. Moving the pins away as you go. And it's useful to pin the side down as you go for the side panel. And start to come down around the underarm now. Still a little more fullness as you go. Just take your time with the pins at this point. Temptation is to rush it. Pinning out the back because we've already done one side. We'll carry on with the back on the one side. Any excess, just cut out the way. Has a tendency to pull down panels if you don't cut any bits off. We're more or less around the back princess seam, but it's only an approximation and it's where you'd like it to be. That's the waistline. I try and pin at the waistline so we know where it is. Depending on your corset design, you might want a higher back than the front. So where the pin is at the top there, that's more or less the princess seam of the back. Just keeping it nice and even. I know I should have more pins there, so it's kind of tricky. Just pin up the back to keep it out the way, so you can work with both hands. Just putting in an extra pin. I think I've got off the waistline just there. And this is where you come to your centre back and you're trying to assess how much excess fabric you have, whether you can turn it in comfortably. And there's too much there. So just snip it out. Don't be afraid of cutting. If you cut too much, just cut another panel and just do that little bit again. And the panels I just gauge them, I don't know. I used to worry about how much you'd need, but over time you sort of get an idea how wide those panels are. And cut a rectangle to give you enough room to play with. I'm getting the straight of the centre back now, all the way down to the hip. Not pulling too hard so that I can curve it into the waist on the centre back. There's no line to follow at this point. You go in a bit of a cross, so you've got the waist to consider. And you just follow it straight down, matching it up at the bottom where the hip is. Still more fullness as you go along, But again, this is something you keep refining until you're happy. Don't be afraid that it doesn't look great at this point, because it won't, but it's getting there. And if there were more pins in, that would look smoother. So there's a bit more tidying up to do to give you a bit more idea about the shape. Cut it all together so it has some uniformity. And depending on your style, in this case mine's going to have a shorter back than the front. The other side is just for demonstration purposes, but it's the right side that you concentrate on, right side of the form. Now we're going to tidy up the armhole a little bit, just to get the shape, some idea of the shape. Best not to take out too much at this stage.